Remembering names is hard, and for the last 30 days, I've spent a ton of time improving my own memory and the ability to remember names. Today, I have 3 takeaways for you to help you improve your own ability to remember names. I'm also going to share my stats so you can get a realistic idea of what you can expect when you train your memory. And I'll throw in a bonus tip just to make sure that you're successful. I'm Justin Golay, and I've helped tons of people improve their ability to remember things as a licensed speech-language pathologist. But the difference is, over the last 30 days, I wasn't helping a stroke patient recover their ability to remember. I was practicing on myself as a typical functioning adult without any neurological damage. The first takeaway is that images are easier to remember than people's names. Think about how often you will recognize somebody that you've seen before, but their name doesn't quite come to you. So knowing that, we can use it. What my process is for remembering names, and this isn't something that I created, it's something that I have learned by doing research on how memory works, is when I hear a name, I will create an image based on that name. Either that name reminds me of something or it sounds like something. And then once I have that image in my head, I will look for a distinguishing feature on somebody's face. Maybe somebody's got a big nose, maybe somebody's got bushy eyebrows, maybe somebody just has real pretty teeth. But I'll take the image and I will stick it on that distinguishing feature in a way that it really interacts with the person's face. So when I see that person again, that feature that sticks out is going to cue that image. And then with that image, I'm able to remember their name better than if I were to just, say, repeat the name over and over in my head, hoping that it would stick. I know that the first time you hear what I'm describing, it can sound like a lot of work. And that leads me to point 2. Practicing recall of names will make you better at remembering names in the real world. Whether you practice making associations at the time of hearing a name, or you create a pre-made list of names associated with images, the more time that you spend practicing, the more automatic it'll become. And so within the first 30 days of practice, the whole process for me takes about 5 seconds on average, which is fast enough that I could learn somebody's name without it interrupting our conversation. For names that I've already created an image for, names that I've put on a flashcard and reviewed multiple times, it takes me about 2 seconds to remember somebody's name and go through the whole process, having the image, placing it on the person's face, and then I have it. My methodology is to create pre-made flashcards, as many as I can. Hopefully I'll have thousands over the coming months. And on one side, I will put the person's name, and then on the other side of that flashcard, I will have a description of the image that I would imagine for that name. An example of this would be Cooper. So for Cooper, I visualize copper wire because the image is easy to visualize, but also sounds very similar to Cooper, and so it's an easy association to make. I'll study those flashcards and get faster at the associations, and then practice linking the images to the faces on a website called Memory League. There are probably other websites out there for practicing name recall, but I practice with Memory League. On Memory League, you get random pictures of people's faces with randomly assigned names, and then you have you have exactly 1 minute to memorize as many names as you can. And it has helped me to not only practice the pre-made images that I've come up with, but also it has given me an opportunity to see the gaps in my pre-made images, and then also practice coming up with names on the spot quickly, because I'm trying to beat the clock and memorize as many names as possible. But to make sure that this all actually matters, to move beyond the drill-based practice, I also will make sure that if I'm watching television or attending a meeting at work, when names come up, I'm intentional about seeing if I can remember the names that I hear. Because I want evidence that this is happening in the real world, that I'm seeing real improvement. And it's not just something that I practice at home in some isolated drill that doesn't have any meaning outside of memory training. So, using this methodology, what was I able to accomplish? On Memory League, when I started out, I was very inconsistent. Remember, you only get 1 minute to memorize as many names as you can. And I was fluctuating between 3 and 9 names. And 9 names actually only happened one time early on. And generally, I was hitting in the 4 to 6 range. In the beginning, at least. Then I intentionally created 500 flashcards of the most common names that I could find online. And when I finished reviewing those, going through the first pass, it was around day 15-ish, somewhere around in there. And with enough review of those flashcards, because I haven't added many since then, at day 30, my top score on Memory League was 12 names in 1 minute, which is about double what I was averaging before. And my typical score, meaning that kind of where I fluctuate, is in that 10 to 12 range. So I'm more consistent with remembering names, and I'm also faster. But still, who cares about a memory game, about a memory drill? You guys probably want to know if it paid off in the real world. Does memory training make you better at remembering real people's names? And for me, it did. Part of the reason that I pursued this memory training and recalling names first is that I took a job a few years ago where it's a large organization, and the inability to remember who does what in all of these different departments with people that I don't interact with every day is holding me back. So I wanted to see if I could memorize these names and do better at work. Needless to say, if I didn't write somebody's name down before I started this training, I wouldn't remember them. So let's put my ability to remember names at a 0 prior to memory training. Towards the end of this 30 days, I had a meeting with Toastmasters. It's an organization around public speaking. And we had the largest number of guests attend that I've ever seen. More guests attended, probably because the new year rolled around and folks were looking for New Year's resolutions. And we had more guests than members. So I took that as an opportunity to see if I could remember their names. And I remembered all of their names. So being able to go from remembering no names to all of the names of guests at a meeting that I have never seen before and I may never see again is a pretty substantial real-life improvement. And honestly, it's way more progress than I expected in 30 days. To be honest with you, when I hear somebody say, improve your memory in 30 days, it sounds like a gimmick to me. In this case, and I'm not trying to sell anything, in this case, being intentional about my practice did make a huge impact in my life. Now I want to talk about point 3. The biggest problem with remembering names may not actually be your memory. It might be your ability to pay attention. And I'm not suggesting that you have some sort of diagnosable attention problem. What I'm saying is it's really hard to remember a name if you weren't paying attention to that name to begin with. In a more dramatic anecdote, I often have stroke patients that will tell me they don't remember the stroke happening, they don't remember the hospitalization, they were at home one day, and next thing they knew, they were in rehab, and their family is telling them that all of this stuff happened, and they are shocked that they can't remember what happened. But if you think about it, it makes perfect sense, because when you are having a stroke, your brain isn't paying attention to what you're seeing and what you're hearing. It is bleeding. So in the same way, if you don't pay attention to a name, your brain isn't going to even encode it in there to be remembered. So what I would challenge you guys to do, my recommendation is, do the same thing that I do when I don't think my kids are paying attention. Right after somebody says their name to you, say the name back to yourself right afterwards, in your brain, just in your head. So somebody comes up to you, they say, "Hi, my name is John." I want you to be looking for that name, and then in your head, I want you to say John right afterward to make sure you captured it. I think you'll find that just by paying attention and being able to say a person's name back to yourself right afterward, you will get an immediate jump in your ability to remember names, even before you apply the mnemonic strategies and the images that we've talked about so far. If I could give you just one takeaway from this video, I would challenge you to use this strategy over the next week and see if you find any improvement in your name recall. Here is my bonus tip. I found periodically that I did not want to sit down and study names. I have a job, I have kids, actually, I have 2 jobs, and I have kids, and I have a wife, and I am very busy. Anytime that I'm not working, I'm thinking about work. So, it's easy to lose motivation. And what I would recommend to anybody out there that's trying to stick with memory training or stick with anything in general is to find a way to document your daily progress. It sounds way too simple, but I cannot stress enough that in my own experience, when I have to write down my best score of the day, and then I compare it to the day before, it motivates me to stick with it. Seeing improvements in consistency and accuracy over time is extremely motivating. And also, something that most people don't realize about themselves is that we are really bad as human beings at remembering progress over time. You might think that you know how good you were at something last week, but I can tell you, as a therapist that has worked with patients who have gone from hardly being able to talk or remember or walk even, that they forget by the end of their rehab just how bad off they were. And you will do the same thing. You will think that you weren't that bad to start with by the time you have improved a bunch, and you won't be able to appreciate your journey unless you write it down and track your progress. So please, even if you just take out a notebook and write down one sentence about your training and write down what you did good today and what you had struggled with, I'd like for you to try and track your progress to show yourself that you're getting better. I want you to leave this video recognizing that if you are also someone who has had difficulty with names, you can improve your ability to remember names dramatically with practice. And I also want you to leave with this. Right now, your brain may be telling you that you are bad at names. And I want you to rewire your brain to stop thinking that and start asking the question, how can I remember names? And you're going to find that you have a lot more success.